What is emergent curriculum? You've heard me talk about it in almost all of my episodes. Maybe you're familiar with it and really well practiced, or maybe you've heard of it and you know a little bit about it, or you're a little bit confused, or maybe you haven't even really had any experience at all with the emergent curriculum style of education. So here is the basic 101s for you on what is emergent curriculum in an early learning setting. We are going to go deeper with this in coming weeks, so stay tuned for that if you want to talk about it more. Okay, so here is my definition of what emergent curriculum is. The basic idea is that educators are spending time observing the children and paying attention to what they're choosing to explore. And then we use that information to inform how we are going to facilitate some learning experiences with the children. But of course, it's so much more than that. Let's see first what Google says. Okay, this is the first thing that came up for me. Emergent curriculum is a philosophy of teaching and a way of planning children's curriculum that focuses on being responsive to their interests. Emergent curriculum is based on the premise that children are most successful at learning when curriculum experiences account for their interests, strengths, needs, and lived realities. I like that definition. So let's dig into this just a little bit deeper, and I'm going to show you what this looks like tangibly in practice. First, I'm going to go over the emergent curriculum cycle, and this is kind of the basic foundation of an emergent curriculum program. Of course, there's so much more. This is kind of your foundational basis of understanding for knowing what emergent curriculum is and what it looks like in a program. This is what the cycle looks like: observation, inference, implementation, and reflection. The cycle can look a little bit different depending on the words that are used, and sometimes there may be an added step or two, but this is the basic foundation of what emergent curriculum cycle looks like. These are the words that I've used to describe each part of the cycle. For it to be an emergent curriculum program, the first thing we're going to do is spend time as an educator observing the children. We are watching for what they are playing with, what they are talking about, what they're choosing to do in their time, how they're engaging with others around them. We are trying to do this with a lens of objectivity, so we're being objective as we notice what the children are doing. It can be very simple. Here's the example I'm going to use today. I see the children are choosing to spend their time playing with the balls. This is an objective look. I'm not giving my opinion on what I think they're doing with it yet. I'm not dissecting it. I'm just saying this is what I see they're doing. All right, as we come over in the cycle, then we're going to inference. So now this is where we get to insert what we think. Observation is to be objective and your inference is to be more subjective. This is a place where you can ask questions and wonder and to go deeper in trying to figure out what these children are trying to get at in their play. What are they trying to really learn? So whether you're with other educators or by yourself, you can ask questions. I wonder why the children are choosing to play with the balls. We can ask ourselves, what could it be about rolling these balls that's intriguing the children so much? What might they be curious about? I wonder if they're experimenting with how the balls move, gravity, motion, speed. So we, as their educators in relationship with them, can make inferences about what we think they might be trying to do and get out of the experiences that they're creating for themselves. And typically, this is actually more that meets the eye. It usually goes so much deeper than the initial thought of what you think maybe they're up to. I encourage you when you're making your inferences, have your initial thought and then go one step further and think deeper beyond that, what else it could be. This is where we're using our critical thinking skills. We've seen something, we wondered about what it might mean, what concept they're working on, and now we can offer something to them. Now we take what we've seen, what we think, and now we introduce either a question or an object to this play that we're seeing. So what are we offering them? Often in this practice, we refer to it as an invitation or a provocation, and it's meant to be very simple. No need to overthink this. So in our example, maybe for younger children, it's as simple as giving them the language they need. They have something to work with. So maybe it's saying, wow, your ball's going so fast, fast. Ooh, that ball is going slow, slow. Maybe your provocation could be setting up a ramp in that area where they tend to play with the balls. Just setting it there, seeing, what they choose to do with it. Or maybe the scenario allows it that you're right there and you're able to offer them a wondering, and you could say, I wonder what would happen if, and then offer whatever you're offering. Okay, so we've observed, we've wondered or inferred about it, and then we've offered a provocation or an invitation, so we're implementing something. Now, the last step in this cycle is reflection. And reflection kind of encompasses a bunch of things in at least how I am familiar with practicing emergent curriculum. That includes like reflection on your things you just observed, inferred on, and offered the children, but now also using documentation as in that reflection piece. And your documentation includes what you've done in your cycle. So a part of the fourth part of the cycle, reflection, you are documenting the cycle itself. Or I guess I could say it like this. A part of reflection is making learning visible. So we can reflect as educators all we want on it, but it doesn't make meaning unless it's documented, right? We're just chatting about it or thinking of it while you're falling asleep at night. It doesn't mean anything. So it's great you're reflecting, you're thinking about it, wonderful. Maybe don't do it while you're falling asleep at night. You should try to keep it within working hours, you know, good work-life balance. To make it meaningful, we need to document it. And documentation, there's so many ways to document it, so many different kinds of documentation. That's a whole series of itself. So we'll get into that another time, but I do want to tell you what you need to include in this reflection/documentation piece of our emergent curriculum cycle. These are essential for it to make learning visible. It's not complicated. Number one, in your documentation, whatever that looks like, you need to have your observation. Remember to keep it objective. Here's an example of what objective would look like. To use a random name, Johnny Smith is sad. Well, you don't know he's sad. You could say Johnny Smith seems to be sad or appears to be sad. So use some language like that. That is objective, unassuming language. We can't assume we know. Okay, so include your objective observation. What do you see? You can even write that on your documentation. What do I see? Da, 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 da. Children are choosing to play with balls often in their play. Number two is your inference. So what do I think this means? Or what do I think they're digging into or what they're trying to explore? What do I think is happening in their learning? I'm wondering if the children are curious about how gravity works and they're using the balls to experiment by dropping them from on top of the climber. And then number three, what are you going to do next? And or why does this matter? Where we're taking our reflection and we're documenting it in here. This is where you get to say, here's how this thing went that I did with the children. You know, this is what I observed. This is how I inferred about it. This is what I implemented. And then this is how the experience went. When I added the ramp, or when I added that question, this is what I saw, and this is what I think, and this is what I'm gonna do next about it, making them visible for yourself and for others to see. Start simple. This could be one sentence or bullet point that just says, I wonder, da 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 da. I wonder if the children are curious about gravity and would be interested in exploring it in new ways. And so then a part of reflection, and before we start observing again, we want to make sure we are thinking about what's next. Continue to observe children, how they interact with materials, keep wondering about what they could be getting at with them as they play with them, and then try something new and implement it. Then reflect on that. How did that go? And keep the cycle going. Make sure we're documenting along the way so that maybe you're doing this every day. You know, in 3 weeks from now, you can see pieces of documentation, and it started with that exploration with the children choosing the balls all the time to now we're over here and we've tried using a ramp. We've tried dropping it from the playhouse. We've tried using square objects. We've tried, you know, I don't know, maybe there's a whole bunch of things that you've done, and now you have all these pieces of documentation that you can look back on and see the learning that takes place in it, right? And we're posting that so parents and families and other educators can see, and maybe even some of the children, the learning and the growth that's taking place. And remember that children are really absorbing this information too, because they're curious and they're interested in it. We're taking something that they're doing, we're watching them and letting them lead the curriculum, and then just popping them questions or little objects, right? We're just giving those to them and offering to them, and then they take a hold and take responsibility for their learning. Our job is to continue to watch and see, well, they didn't take to that thing that I offered them. I thought they might, but they didn't. So now I need to observe again and see what maybe they actually are interested in, try something else. And that's the thing with emergent curriculum. There's no wrong answer, really. You just keep trying to offer things, and in those offerings, children are going to pick up what they need to pick up, and then they're going to learn what they need to learn in that experience. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think we as adults are too different from that as well. I would argue we also learn best when we're interested and invested in something. There's a lot of info. I think it's very simple, but it's also very complex at the same time. So I want to give you that. I want to give you that emergent curriculum cycle, and I don't want to go too far with digging into too much stuff that this gets complicated, because I really want you to just get a good handle on that emergent curriculum cycle. That brings me to something I want to share, and that is that this is the start of a series about emergent curriculum and more of those pedagogies and philosophies that we are going to approach and tackle and try to get our hands messy with. This is emergent curriculum like 101 for you. Notice on my thumbnails there's going to be a system so that you can jump in at what level you are feeling like you are ready to absorb. This is a level 1 video, so anything with the number 1 in the corner are the basics of the practices, like your foundational understandings. Level 2, maybe it's added a little bit more complexities to it. You're ready, you kind of feel like you've got a good handle on stage 1 of things. You want to push yourself as an educator a little further and to get into it a little deeper. Stage 3, that's where I find myself are continually striving to be in. So even though I would say I'm in stage 3, I'm also still learning and still digging into these concepts. There are more challenging kind of thoughts and theories, and we've never checked off all the boxes, and we are always learning, we're always growing, and we're always developing our skills deeper. I want you to take that and put any of your questions said below. Make sure you keep tuning in on Wednesdays, because we are going to have more episodes in the series about pedagogy and philosophy. As always, thanks for joining me. We will see you again next week on the Early Childhood Educator.